The starship Endurance dropped out of hyperspace with a soft hum, and Commander Jack Holden felt his stomach settle as normal space wrapped around them again. Through the wide viewing window of the bridge, he could see the planet below. Valentris Prime was beautiful. Its surface was covered in shining cities that caught the light of twin suns. Rivers of silver cut through forests of blue trees. It looked like a painting, not a real world. Jack had been in space for 12 years. He had seen many planets, but this one made him stop and stare like a young boy seeing snow for the first time. "We have arrived, Commander," said the ship's pilot, a young man named Danny Cole. "Valantrian Orbital Control is hailing us." Jack straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. "Put them through." A face appeared on the screen. The Valantrian had silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were the strangest thing Jack had ever seen. They shifted colors constantly, like oil floating on water. Purple became blue, became green, became silver, all in the space of a few seconds. "Human vessel Endurance," the Valantrian said. His voice was cold and formal. "You have been granted permission to attend the coronation of Princess Silurith. You will land at docking platform 7. Do not deviate from your assigned path. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not touch anything." The screen went dark before Jack could respond. Danny let out a low whistle. "Friendly folks." Jack said nothing. He had expected this. Humanity had only made contact with the wider galaxy 15 years ago. In that time, they had learned that most alien species looked down on them. Humans were young. Humans were primitive. Humans were emotional and messy and lived such short lives that other species barely considered them worth talking to. The Valantrians were the worst of all. Their empire was 10,000 years old. They had built cities when humans were still living in caves. They considered themselves the most advanced and civilized species in the known galaxy, and they never let anyone forget it. The invitation to the coronation had surprised everyone. It was the first time humans had been asked to attend a major galactic event. Jack suspected it was not a sign of respect. It was probably meant to show the other species how far below them humanity truly was. But orders were orders. The president herself had asked Jack to lead this mission. He would smile and be polite and represent his species with dignity, even if the Valantrians treated him like dirt. Lieutenant Emma Price entered the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures, a small woman with sharp eyes and red hair that she kept tied back in a tight bun. She carried a tablet computer and looked worried. "I have been reviewing the protocols for the ceremony," she said. "There are over 200 rules we need to follow: where to stand, how to bow, what colors we can wear. If we break any of them, it will be considered an insult." Jack took the tablet and scrolled through the list. "We cannot make eye contact with anyone above our station. We cannot speak in the presence of royalty. We cannot eat or drink anything unless it is offered 3 times. He shook his head. "These people have too much free time." Emma almost smiled. "There is something else. Something interesting." She pulled up an image on the tablet. It showed a Valantrian female wearing a beautiful mask made of platinum and blue jewels. "This is Princess Silurith. During public events, Valantrian royalty always wear masks like this. Why? Because of their eyes. Valantrian eyes show their true emotions. They cannot hide what they feel. The colors shift to reveal happiness, sadness, anger, fear, even lies. It is impossible for a Valantrian to hide the truth if someone looks into their eyes." Emma paused. "The royal family wears masks so that their subjects cannot read their emotions. It is considered a sign of power and mystery." Jack looked at the image of the masked princess. "So nobody knows what she really thinks or feels." "Exactly. She has worn the mask at every public appearance since she was a child. No one outside the royal family has seen her eyes in over 40 years. The Endurance descended through the atmosphere of Volantris Prime. Jack watched the cities grow larger, the crystal towers reaching up toward them like fingers. Everything was clean and perfect and cold. There were no advertisements, no signs of poverty, no chaos. It looked like a world designed by machines. They landed on the assigned platform and were met by a group of Volantrian officials. The aliens were tall and thin, with long limbs and silver skin. They moved with grace, like dancers, and they looked at the humans the way a person might look at insects crawling across their kitchen floor. "You will follow us," one of them said. "Do not wander. Do not speak to other guests. You have been assigned a place at the back of the Grand Pavilion." Jack nodded and said nothing. He led his team of 6 humans through the streets of the capital city. They passed aliens from dozens of different species, all dressed in fine clothes and jewelry. A few of them glanced at the humans with curiosity. Most ignored them completely. The Grand Pavilion was the largest building Jack had ever seen. It was made entirely of glass that seemed to be alive. The walls shifted and changed color with the wind, and they made soft musical sounds, like distant bells. Inside, thousands of aliens had gathered to witness the coronation. The humans were placed at the very back, behind a pillar that blocked most of their view. Jack did not complain. He simply stood with his team and waited. The ceremony began with music, unlike anything Jack had heard before. It seemed to come from the building itself, from the living glass that surrounded them. Then the crowd fell silent as a figure appeared at the far end of the pavilion. Princess Silurith walked slowly down the central path. She wore robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight, flowing and shimmering with every step. Her mask caught the light and sparkled like a blue star. She was beautiful and distant and untouchable. But Jack noticed something the others missed. He had spent years reading body language, learning to spot danger before it arrived, and something was wrong with the princess. Her shoulders were tense. Her steps were too careful, too controlled. She was afraid of something. He looked around the pavilion, searching for the source of her fear. Everything seemed normal. The aliens watched the ceremony with calm faces. The guards stood at their post. Then he saw it. A group of Volantrians. Near the front, dressed in black robes instead of the colorful clothes worn by everyone else. They were not watching the princess. They were watching the guards, counting them, measuring distances. Jack opened his mouth to warn someone, but it was too late. The explosion came from the ceiling, a blast of fire and glass that rained down upon the crowd. The beautiful music turned to screams. The living glass shattered and fell like deadly rain. And in the chaos, the figures in black began to move toward the princess. The explosion threw Jack backward. He hit the floor hard, and for a moment, the world was nothing but noise and light and pain. Glass fell around him like rain. Someone was screaming. Many people were screaming. He forced himself to stand. His training took over, pushing the fear and confusion to the back of his mind. Around him, alien dignitaries ran in all directions. They knocked each other down in their panic. They cried out in languages he did not understand. The most civilized species in the galaxy had become a mob of terrified animals. Jack looked for his team. Emma was on the ground nearby, bleeding from a cut on her forehead but alive. Danny Cole was helping another crew member stand up. They were all still breathing. "Stay here," Jack told Emma. "Keep everyone together." "Where are you going?" she asked. But Jack was already moving. He pushed through the crowd, fighting against the flow of bodies rushing toward the exits. He kept his eyes on the front of the pavilion, where he had last seen the princess. The figures in black had reached her. There were 6 of them, all Volantrians, all moving with purpose while everyone else panicked. The royal guards were scattered, some injured by the blast, others trying to control the crowd. No one was protecting the princess. The leader of the Attackers was a tall Valantrian with a scar running down the left side of his face. His silver skin was pale, almost white, and his shifting eyes burned with hatred. He grabbed the princess by her arm and pulled her close. "People of Valantris," he shouted, and his voice carried over the chaos. "Look upon your false princess. Look upon the corruption that sits upon our throne." The crowd slowed. People stopped running and turned to watch. Even in their fear, they could not ignore the scene unfolding before them. "I am Corvith," the scarred Valantrian continued. "I speak for the purity movement. We will not allow our sacred empire to be stained by the presence of lesser species. This princess invited humans to our most holy ceremony. She has shown weakness. She has brought shame upon our ancestors." Jack kept moving closer. He was only 30 feet away now. The other attackers had formed a circle around Corvith and the princess, weapons drawn, watching for threats. But they were focused on the Valantrian guards. They were not watching the small human creeping through the crowd. "And now, Corvith," said with terrible satisfaction, "I will show you all the truth. I will show you why this princess is not fit to rule." He reached up and grabbed the edge of the princess's mask. She struggled, but his grip was too strong. With one violent motion, he tore the mask from her face and threw it to the ground. The crowd gasped. Jack heard sounds of shock and horror from every direction. He did not understand why. He could now see the princess's face clearly. She was beautiful, with delicate features and high cheekbones and silver skin like all Valantrians. But her eyes were different. Among the swirling colors of purple and silver that marked her species, there were flecks of something else. Deep brown spots, warm and dark, scattered through the shifting patterns like stars in a strange sky. Jack had seen those colors before. He saw them every time he looked in a mirror. Those were human eyes, or at least partly human. "You see," Corvith screamed to the crowd, "you see what she truly is. There's human blood in her veins. The royal family has been corrupted. Our future empress is part animal." The Princess Silurith stood frozen. Her exposed eyes were wide with fear and shame. Tears ran down her silver cheeks. She looked small and broken, like a child caught in a terrible lie. Something inside Jack snapped. He did not think about consequences. He did not think about the 200 rules he was supposed to follow. He did not think about the fact that he was one small human against 6 armed aliens. He just moved. Jack hit the first attacker from behind, driving his elbow into the back of the alien's neck. The Valantrian fell without a sound. Jack grabbed his weapon, some kind of energy pistol, and kept moving. The second attacker turned just in time to receive the butt of the pistol across his face. Jack ducked under a wild swing from the third, then drove his knee into the alien's stomach. 3 down in less than 4 seconds. The remaining attackers finally realized what was happening. They turned their weapons toward Jack, but he was too close, too fast. He moved between them like water, hitting and dodging and striking. Years of combat training flowed through his body without conscious thought. Corvith pushed the princess aside and drew his own weapon. His eyes blazed with fury as he aimed at Jack. "Filthy human," he spat. "You dare to touch us?" Jack threw the pistol he had taken. It hit Corvith's hand and sent his weapon spinning away. Then Jack closed the distance between them in 2 steps and drove his fist into the Valantrian's face. Corvith staggered backward. His silver blood ran from his nose. He looked at Jack with pure hatred, but also with something else. Fear. "How?" Corvith whispered. "You are just a human." Jack hit him again, and again. Corvith fell to the ground and did not get up. The pavilion had gone silent. Thousands of aliens stared at the scene before them. A single human stood among 6 fallen Valantrian warriors. His chest heaving, his fist bloody, his eyes burning with quiet rage. Emma appeared at his side. She had followed him through the crowd, and she quickly moved to secure the unconscious attackers with strips of cloth torn from their own robes. The Volantrian guards finally arrived, too late to help but quick enough to take credit for the capture. Jack turned to look at the princess. Silrith had not moved. She stood where Corvith had left her mask lying broken on the ground, her human eyes exposed for all to see. She was shaking. He walked toward her slowly, the way you would approach a frightened animal. The guards moved to stop him, but she raised her hand. "Let him come," she said. Her voice was soft and tired. Jack stopped a few feet away from her. Up close, he could see the brown flecks in her eyes more clearly. They were not a flaw or a corruption. They were beautiful, like autumn leaves floating in a silver stream. "Are you hurt?" he asked Dot. She shook her head. "You saved my life. I did what anyone would do." "No." She looked at him directly, her eyes meeting his. "No other species would have done what you just did. They would have watched. They would have calculated the political costs and benefits. They would have done nothing." She paused. "But you did not think. You just acted. Because it was the right thing to do." Jack did not know what to say. Around them, the crowd was beginning to murmur. He could hear shocked voices discussing what they had witnessed. Not just the attack, but the revelation. The princess had human blood. The future empress of the Volantrian Dominion was not pure. "What happens now?" Jack asked. Silrith's eyes shifted colors, the brown flecks swimming among swirls of deep purple. She looked out at the crowd, at the dignitaries who had watched her secret be exposed, at the empire that would now demand answers. "Now," she said quietly, "everything changes." The guards surrounded them and began to lead the princess away. She looked back at Jack one last time, and in her eyes he saw something he had not expected. Hope. Whatever secret she had been hiding, whatever truth her eyes had revealed, she was not facing it alone anymore. A human had stood up for her when no one else would. And somehow, that seemed to matter more than anything else. Jack watched her go, knowing that his simple act of courage had just changed the course of galactic history. He just did not know yet how much. The human delegation was confined to their guest quarters immediately after the attack. Guards stood outside their door, polite but firm. They were not prisoners, the official said. They were being protected. But the doors remained locked from the outside, and no one would answer their questions. Jack spent hours pacing the small room. Emma sat at a table, working on her tablet, searching through every database she could access. Danny and the others tried to rest, but sleep would not come to any of them. "I do not understand," Jack said for the 10th time. "How can she have human blood? We only made contact 15 years ago. She must be at least 60 years old." Emma looked up from her tablet. "The Volantrians live for hundreds of years. She's actually closer to 90. But you are right. The timing makes no sense. Unless there was contact before," Danny said from his corner of the room. "Before the official first contact. A secret meeting that nobody recorded." Jack stopped pacing. That was possible. Governments kept secrets. Species kept secrets. Maybe humans and Volantrians had met long before anyone admitted it. Before they could discuss further, the door opened. 2 royal guards entered, followed by a figure in a hooded cloak. The guards checked the room, then stepped back into the hallway and closed the door. The figure lowered her hood. It was Princess Silrith. She looked different without her mask and without her formal robes. Smaller somehow, more real. Her eyes, with their strange mix of silver and brown, were red from crying. But she held herself straight and proud. "I should not be here," she said. "If they find out I came to see you, there will be more trouble. But I need you to understand." Jack offered her a chair. She sat down, folding her hands in her lap like a nervous child. "You deserve to know the truth," Silurus said. You saved my life. You stood against your own interests to protect me. Among my people, such a debt cannot go unpaid. You do not owe us anything, Jack said. I owe you everything. She took a deep breath. What I am about to tell you is known only to a handful of people in the galaxy. My grandmother made sure the secret was buried. But now it has been exposed, and there is no point in hiding anymore. She looked at each of the humans in turn, then began her story. 60 years ago, a Volantrian exploration ship was traveling through an uncharted region of space. They were mapping new star systems, looking for resources and possible colony worlds. They found a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Your Earth. Jack felt his heart begin to beat faster. 60 years ago, long before the official first contact, the ship experienced a malfunction, Silurus continued. Something went wrong with their engines, and they crashed on the surface. Only one crew member survived, a young female named Izalith. She was badly injured and stranded on a primitive world with no way to call for help. What happened to her? Emma asked softly. Silurus's eyes shifted colors, the brown flecks growing darker. She was found by a human, a farmer named George Hartley. He lived alone on a small piece of land in a place called Kansas. He found her ship in his field. He found her dying inside. The room was completely silent. Every human was holding their breath. He should have been afraid, Silurus said. He should have called his authorities, reported the alien craft, treated her as a threat. But he did not. He carried her to his home. He cleaned her wounds. He stayed by her side for weeks while she healed. He helped her, Jack said. It was not a question. He did more than help her. He protected her. When other humans came looking for the crashed ship, he hid her. When she was well enough to move, he built a secret room in his barn where she could live. He learned to communicate with her. He shared his food, his home, his life. Silurus paused, and a single tear ran down her silver cheek. They fell in love. The words hung in the air like something fragile and precious. Izalith lived with George Hartley for 3 years. They could not marry in any legal way. They could not tell anyone about their relationship. But they were happy, and eventually they had a daughter. Emma covered her mouth with her hand. That is not possible. The biology would be too different. The universe is stranger than we know, Silurus said. Somehow, life found a way. The child appeared fully Volantrian. She had silver skin and shifting eyes. But deep in those eyes, there were traces of her father. Brown flecks that only appeared in certain light. What happened to them? Jack asked. After 5 years, a Volantrian rescue ship finally found the signal from the crashed vessel. They came to Earth in secret. Izalith had to make a choice. She could stay with George and live in hiding forever. Or she could return to her people with her daughter and give the child a chance at a normal life. Silurus's voice broke slightly. She chose to leave. It was the hardest thing she ever did. George understood. He told her to go, to take their daughter and give her a future. He never stopped loving her. He never married another woman. He lived alone on that farm until he died. And the daughter? Danny asked. The daughter was raised as a full Volantrian. Izalith never told anyone the truth about her father. The child grew up, excelled in school, rose through society, and eventually married into the royal family. She became my mother. Silurus looked directly at Jack. Her eyes were swimming with color, brown and silver and purple, all mixing together. George Hartley was my grandfather. Human blood runs in my veins. Every time I look in the mirror, I see the evidence of a love that crossed the stars. Jack stood slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the alien city, the crystal towers and silver streets of a civilization 10,000 years old. And all of it was about to be ruled by a woman who was part human. What will happen to you now? He asked. The High Council will meet tomorrow. They will debate whether I am fit to rule. The laws are clear. The royal bloodline must be pure. My enemies will demand that I step aside. That is not fair, Emma said fiercely. You did not choose your ancestors. And being part human is not a crime. Silurith smiled sadly. To many of my people, it is worse than a crime. It is a contamination. They believe human emotions, human weakness, human mortality will spread through my blood like a disease. Jack turned from the window. Then we will speak for you. We will tell the council that being human is not a weakness. We will make them understand. They will not listen to you. Humans have no standing in our courts. Your voice carries no weight. Then we will make them listen. Jack's voice was hard with determination. We had not asked to be brought into this. But we are here now. And I am not going to watch you lose your throne because of George Hartley's blood. Silurith stood and faced him. For a long moment, they looked at each other. The human commander and the alien princess, who was not fully alien. Why? She asked. Why would you fight for me? You do not know me. You have nothing to gain. Jack thought about George Hartley, a simple farmer who had looked at a wounded alien and seen a person in need. A man who had loved without caring about the differences between their species. A man who had given up his family so his daughter could have a future. Because it is the right thing to do, Jack said. And because that is what humans do. Silurith reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, but her grip was warm with gratitude. Then we will face the council together, she said. Human and Volantrian. And we will show them what that combination can do. The debate lasted for 3 days. Volantrian nobles argued with each other in the hallways of the council building. Alien representatives sent messages back to their home worlds, asking for guidance. News of the trial spread across the galaxy, and everywhere people talked about the princess with human eyes. Jack and his team remained on the planet, waiting. They were no longer confined to their quarters, but they were followed everywhere by guards and watched by suspicious eyes. Some Volantrians spat on the ground when they walked past. Others nodded respectfully. The Empire was divided. On the morning of the 4th day, the council announced that a decision had been reached. The chamber filled once again with observers from every corner of known space. The air was thick with tension. Silurith stood on the central platform, just as she had during the trial. But this time, she was not alone. Jack stood beside her, and behind them stood Emma, Danny, and the rest of the human delegation. They had not been invited to stand there. But no one had stopped them either. Sulfan rose slowly from his seat. The ancient counselor looked tired, as if the weight of the decision had aged him even further. He held a piece of paper in his trembling hands. The High Council of the Volantrian Dominion has voted, he announced. The matter was not easily decided. Strong arguments were made on both sides. But in the end, we must consider not just our traditions, but our future. Jack felt Silurith's hand brush against his. He took it and held it tightly. Princess Silurith is hereby confirmed as the rightful heir to the throne, Sulfan said. She will be crowned Empress of the Volantrian Dominion. The chamber exploded with sound. Cheers and shouts of protest mixed together. Corvith screamed in rage and had to be restrained by guards. But the alien observers were applauding, their various forms of celebration creating a strange and beautiful noise. Sultan raised his hand for silence. There is more. The council has also decided that the laws regarding blood purity will be changed. From this day forward, the Volantrian Dominion will judge its leaders by their character and abilities, not by their ancestry. Jack felt tears forming in his eyes. He had not expected this. He had hoped for mercy, not revolution. Silurith stepped forward to address the chamber. Her eyes, brown-flecked and beautiful, swept across the crowd. "I will not hide who I am," she said. "I will not wear a mask to cover my eyes. Every time you look at me, you will see the truth of my heritage. You will see Velantrian and human mixed together. And I hope that in time, you will see it not as a corruption, but as a gift." She turned to look at Jack and the human delegation. "Humans taught me something important. They taught me that strength does not come from purity. It comes from connection, from empathy, from the ability to see yourself in another being, no matter how different they seem." My grandfather understood this. A simple farmer looked at an alien woman and saw someone worth loving. That is the kind of wisdom we need. The coronation ceremony took place 1 week later. It was smaller than the original event, held in a private garden inside the palace. Only the most important officials attended, along with the human delegation, who had been given places of honor. Silurith wore robes of silver and gold. A new crown, designed to complement her eyes rather than hide them, rested on her head. She spoke the ancient words of commitment, promising to serve her people with wisdom and courage. When the ceremony ended, she walked through the garden to where Jack stood waiting. The sun of Velantris Prime shone down on them, warm and golden. "Thank you," she said simply. "I only told the truth," Jack replied. "You did more than that. You gave me hope. You showed me that I do not have to be ashamed of who I am." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small photograph, old and faded. This was found in my grandmother's belongings after she died. I have carried it with me my whole life. She handed the photograph to Jack. He looked at it and felt his breath catch in his throat. The image showed a young woman with silver skin, standing next to a middle-aged man in overalls. They were in front of a wooden farmhouse with fields stretching out behind them. Both of them were smiling, their happiness obvious even across the decades. "George Hartley," Jack said softly. "And my grandmother, Isoleth." Silureth's eyes shimmered with emotion. "I want you to take this back to Earth. Find his family, if any still remain. Tell them what he did. Tell them that his kindness echoed across the stars and changed the course of history." Jack held the photograph carefully, as if it were made of gold. "I will find them. I promise." The Endurance departed Velantris Prime the next day. Jack stood on the bridge, watching the beautiful planet grow smaller in the viewing window. He thought about everything that had happened. A coronation, an attack, a secret revealed. A trial that changed the future of an empire. And at the center of it all, a human farmer who had looked at an alien stranger and chosen to love her. Emma came to stand beside him. "What are you thinking about?" "I am thinking about George Hartley. He never knew what came from his actions. He never knew that his granddaughter would become an empress. He just did what he thought was right, day after day, without expecting anything in return. That is what makes it meaningful," Emma said. "He did not help Isoleth because he wanted something. He helped her because it was the right thing to do." Jack nodded slowly. "That is what we have to remember. As we go out into the galaxy, as we meet new species and face new challenges, we have to remember that every small act of kindness matters. Every moment of compassion ripples outward in ways we cannot predict." The starship jumped into hyperspace, leaving Velantris Prime behind. But Jack knew that the connection between their two peoples would only grow stronger. Silurith would rule the Empire with human blood in her veins and human wisdom in her heart. And Earth would learn that one of their own had touched the stars long before anyone realized. When they returned home, Jack traveled to Kansas. He found the old Hartley farm, now owned by a family called the Nolans. They were descendants of George Hartley's sister, the only family he had left behind. Jack told them the story. He showed them the photograph. He watched their faces change from confusion to wonder to tears of joy. He always said he saw something in the sky that night, the oldest Nolan said. He always said he met someone special. We thought he was dreaming. We thought it was loneliness talking. It was real, Jack said. And his love changed everything. He left the photograph with the Nolans. It belonged with George Hartley's family. A reminder that compassion crosses all boundaries, that love knows no species, that the smallest acts of kindness can echo through eternity. As Jack walked away from the farmhouse, he looked up at the evening sky. The stars were beginning to appear. Tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere up there, an empress with human eyes was beginning her reign. Somewhere up there, George Hartley's legacy was shaping the future of the galaxy. And on Earth. In a small farmhouse in Kansas, a family was learning that their quiet ancestor had been one of the most important humans who ever lived. Not because he was powerful or famous or extraordinary, but because he was kind. That, Jack realized, was humanity's greatest gift to the universe. Not their technology or their ambition or their endless curiosity, but their capacity for compassion. Their ability to see a stranger and choose to help. Their willingness to love without limit or condition. That was what would lead them to the stars. That was what would make them great. The High Council Chamber was the oldest building on Valentris Prime. It had stood for 8,000 years. Built from stone that came from the first colony ships. Carved with the names of every leader who had ever ruled the Empire. Jack felt the weight of that history pressing down on him as he entered through the massive doors. The chamber was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Hundreds of Valantrians filled those seats, their silver faces cold and unreadable. But they were not alone. Representatives from dozens of other species had come to witness the trial. Jack saw insect-like creatures from the Crix Collective, floating gas beings from the Nebulan Drift, and many others he could not identify. The whole galaxy was watching. Silurith stood on the central platform, alone. She wore simple white robes instead of her royal clothes. Her face was bare, her eyes exposed for all to see. She looked small and fragile, but she held her head high. The human delegation was placed in a back corner, behind a rope that separated them from the other observers. Guards stood nearby, making sure they did not move or speak. Jack clenched his fists but stayed quiet. For now, the leader of the High Council, an ancient Valantrian named Sultan, rose from his seat. His skin had faded to a pale gray with age, and his eyes moved slowly, like tired moons. But his voice was strong. "We are gathered to determine the fitness of Silurith to assume the throne of the Valantrian Dominion," he announced. "Evidence has been presented that she carries blood from an outside species. This is a serious matter. Our laws are clear on the requirements for royal succession." A door opened, and Corvith was led into the chamber. His face was bruised from his fight with Jack, and his hands were bound with silver chains. But his eyes burned with hatred and triumph. He had lost the battle, but he might still win the war. "Corvith of the Purity Movement has brought this accusation," Sultan continued. "He will speak first." The guards removed Corvith's chains. He walked to the center of the platform and looked around the chamber with pride. "For generations, we have kept our bloodline pure," he said. "We have built the greatest empire in the galaxy because we never allowed ourselves to be weakened by lesser species. And now we learn that the future empress carries human blood." He spat the word like poison. Human, the youngest species in the galaxy. Creatures who live less than a century. Emotional, violent, unpredictable animals who have not even mastered their own planet. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the Valantrian seats. Jack felt his anger rising. "If we allow this corruption to take the throne, we invite disaster," Corvith continued. "Human weakness will spread through our ruling class. Their short-sighted thinking will guide our policies. Their primitive emotions will cloud our judgment. We will become as chaotic and destructive as they are. He pointed at the human delegation. Look at them. They have been part of galactic civilization for 15 years, and already they have brought violence into our most sacred ceremony. Their commander attacked Valantrian citizens. He spilled Valantrian blood on holy ground. Is this the species we want mixed with our rulers? More murmurs, louder now. Some of the alien observers were nodding. Jack realized with horror that Corvus was winning. The galaxy already looked down on humanity. It was easy to believe the worst. Sultan raised his hand for silence. Does anyone speak in defense of the princess? The chamber was quiet. The Valantrian nobles looked at their feet. The alien representatives studied their hands. No one wanted to stand up for a half-human princess. No one wanted to be associated with the lowest species in the galaxy. Jack could not stay silent anymore. I will speak, he said loudly. The guards moved to stop him, but Sultan waved them back. The human wishes to address the council. This is unusual, but we will allow it. Jack stepped over the rope and walked toward the central platform. Every eye in the chamber followed him. He could feel the contempt, the disgust, the dismissal. But he kept walking. He stopped beside Silurith and faced the council. My name is Jack Holden, he said. I am a commander in the human space fleet. I have no authority here. I have no standing in your courts. I am just a human, a member of the species you consider primitive and worthless. He paused and looked around the chamber. You talk about human weakness. You talk about our short lives and our emotions and our violence. But let me tell you a story about a human. The chamber was silent. Even Corvus stopped smirking. 60 years ago, a Valantrian woman crashed on Earth. She was injured and stranded. She should have died. But a human found her. A farmer named George Hartley. He had never seen an alien before. He had no way of knowing if she was dangerous. Every instinct should have told him to run away or call for help. Jack's voice grew stronger. But he did not run. He did not call for help. He carried her to his home. He cleaned her wounds. He saved her life. And when he learned who she was, when he understood that she was alone and afraid, he did not care that she was different. He protected her. He loved her. He turned to look at Silurith. That human farmer looked at an alien from another world and saw a person. Not a threat. Not an opportunity. A person who needed help. And he gave that help freely, expecting nothing in return. Jack faced the council again. You call that weakness. I call it strength. The strength to see past differences. The strength to reach out to someone who is not like you. The strength to love without conditions. Emma had moved to the edge of the rope. She spoke up, her voice clear and calm. I am a scientist. I study cultures and species. In 15 years of contact with the galaxy, humans have formed more successful diplomatic relationships than any other young species in history. We have made peace with enemies. We have built bridges between peoples who had fought for centuries. Do you know why? She looked at the alien observers. Because we do not see species. We see individuals. We are not limited by old hatreds or ancient categories. We judge each person, each being, by their actions. That is not a weakness. That is an advantage. Sultan leaned forward. You make interesting points. But our laws are clear. The royal bloodline must be pure. Jack stepped forward. Then your laws are wrong. Princess Silurith has been raised in your culture. She has studied your history. She has prepared her entire life to lead your people. She is Valantrian in every way that matters. The only difference is that she also carries something extra. She carries the ability to understand other species, to connect with them, to feel what they feel. He pointed at the alien observers. Look around this chamber. Your empire rules over dozens of species. You need a leader who can understand them all, who can see beyond her own kind. Silurith is not weakened by her human blood. She is strengthened by it. Corvith jumped to his feet. This is nonsense. The human is manipulating you. They always manipulate. It is in their nature. Jack turned to face him. Yes, it is in our nature. It is in our nature to fight for what is right. It is in our nature to stand up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. It is in our nature to love fiercely and completely. If those are weaknesses, then we embrace them. He looked at the council one last time. You can reject Silurith because of her blood. You can throw away the best leader your empire will ever have because you are afraid of a farmer from Kansas. Or you can embrace the future. A future where species work together. Where differences make us stronger. Where a princess with human eyes leads the galaxy into a new age. The chamber erupted in noise. Valantrians shouted at each other. Alien observers argued among themselves. Corvus screamed accusations. But Jack saw something else, something that made his heart lift. Some of the aliens were nodding. Some of the Valantrians were looking at Silurith with new eyes. Some of them were beginning to understand. The vote would be close. But for the first time, Jack believed they might actually win.